Hello and good evening, friends. Hope you're all well this evening. So, tonight I'm going to be working on Hello Mountain Mama. Tonight I'm going to be working on a teapot handle. I'm going to be finishing up a sculpture and we're going to do some teacups. So this is the piece from last night that I finished at the end of the night. It's pretty fun. It's got some nice trimming. I don't know if you can see how well you can see the trimming, but I put this kind of wobbly swirl. Thank you, appreciate it. In the lid, and then kind of match that to the rim around the piece. And I've got kind of a wobbly swirl going around this, and then there's a swirl coming up the spout. I don't know if you were here when I finished that piece last night, so figured I'd show it off a little bit before I got started and moved on. So this is actually the piece we're starting with this evening. Need to make a handle for it. Make sure everything's nice and cleaned up. So how is everyone this evening? Doing great, Mountain Mama says. That's good. Hopefully the weather hasn't hit you too hard. I assume you're in a warmer climate at the moment. Oh yes, that's good. So I think I'm going to do another handle coming off the backside for this one. So it'll go here. shaping up this clay to get ready for a handle. Again, I'm starting with just a bit of shaping, getting that nice indentation in the handle in the center of it, thinning it out. Mountain Mama says, is there a pottery competition like the blown away glass competition? If not, there should be. Would love to see you compete. So this great pottery, the Twitch Pottery Throwdown is based off of the Great Pottery Throwdown, which is a competition show in the similar vein of Blown Away, except it's in the UK. And I looked into it when I saw the very first season, and you have to be a resident in the UK in order to participate. And it would have required a lot more than just traveling there. Because we looked into it, I would have traveled there, and I actually downloaded the application for season 2, and they didn't. There was just no way for me to actually compete in it. So that's pretty much what spurred me to start streaming for the Twitch Pottery Throwdown, because I said if I ever had a chance to get on the Great Pottery Throwdown that I would take it, no matter what it was. And this was the closest thing that I could. Hey Amaki, good to see you again. Hope you're well. Good evening to you. So this was the closest thing that I could come to for the throwdown. So this is about as good as it gets for pottery right now in the U.S. And this isn't really. This is kind of a soft competition. It's not really like no one's getting eliminated or anything like that. We're just doing it for fun. So, but it's a good time. So that's kind of. Unfortunately, there isn't one. And yes, if there was one, I would gladly throw my hat in the ring and send in an application. Alright, so I'm just prepping this handle to get attached here. Sometimes you can play with them and see what you like the look of. So I could see what it would look like if it went over the top. The problem with this one going over the top is that this lid is a little bit taller than the other one. So it comes up. That's kind of why I wouldn't put this there, because it's just not quite. It would require it to be a very tall handle. Like that. So I'm just going to go with the off the back here. Give it probably something in this vein. I'm just going to prep this area for attachment. Set this lid off to the side for now. I'm trying to work a little bit of water into the handle here, and now I'm going to prep the surface on the teapot. I'm just trying to line it up. Mountain Mama, have you seen the Great Pottery Throwdown? It's syndicated on HBO Max. If you have the opportunity to watch that. I have not. Don't have HBO Max. Yep. Well, if you get a chance, it's worth a watch. It's a good show. Season 4 is currently airing in the UK right now. It's not available to watch here yet because the season's not finished. I don't have HBO Max either, but I watched all of the seasons on YouTube. They got taken off YouTube right at the end of the third season, because I assume that HBO had bought the rights to it at that point in time, and they took it down for the syndication. And now there's just real choppy, cut up versions of the show on YouTube, so it's kind of hard to watch on that platform. Yeah. I follow the Great Pottery Throwdown on Facebook, and they did what they call Naked Raku on the episode, the last episode from, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, and their Naked Raku is basically the horsehair and feathers, just firing the raw clay and fuming the clay body, which is basically what I do all the time. So I was like, man, that is like my... Hi Gretchen, how are you? I was like, that's my my challenge right there. I would have nailed that one. So I've got to get this up in the air. I did not watch the Mars landing. No. I saw that it was happening, and I had a lot of things to take care of before the stream this evening, so I just didn't get a chance to do anything else. And I had another class this afternoon, so it was pretty cool. I bet it was, yeah. I'll probably try to check out a video of it later. So I'm just trying to work this handle into the form, stretch it out a little bit, clean it up. Oh, they showed the first few pictures too. Nice. Yeah, I can't wait to see it. Yeah, I'll look at all the NASA social media when I get done. Just line this handle up. I'm gonna check the shape of the handle and make sure it's moving the direction I want it. Looks good. So now I'm going to work it in, seal it to the pot here. Mountain Mama says sweet. So I'm just kind of finishing the bottom of the piece here. I need to just let this set up for a little while. So I'm going to actually let it hang a little bit. So I'm going to put it on the edge of this board. Like that for a little while. Let it hang out upside down. Dr. Sarah Watson, thank you so much for the follow. Really appreciate it. My inner cat is saying no. Yeah. Well, I've got the studio closed up so the cats can't come in for the moment at least. What does that do? So what's happening is I'm letting gravity pull this handle down so it has a higher arch. If I flip it back over before the handle has a chance to set up for a little while or dry out, then it's going to let gravity pull the opposite direction, so it's not going to be as tight to the body here, and it'll be lower at this point here, so it'll kind of slump down and make it look a little fatter. It'll lean away from the pot, and I want it to be closer. I want your hand to be closer to the center of gravity, so I want it to lean up towards the top rather than away, because that will actually put your hand further away from the pot than I want it to be. So I'm just going to leave that there for now. Set its lid with it. Yeah, I put a lot of thought into my pieces. I made a lot of mugs, and for the amount of work and thought that I put into a piece like this drinking vessel, it's more than I have to do for like a highly decorative bottle. when it comes down to it, there's more thought and detail and care put into a mug than there is in a horsehair feather pot that I could sell for 4, 5, 6, 10 times as much. And the primary reason is because when I'm doing a decorative piece, I'm more worried about the surface, the view of the surface, so the finish and just kind of the proportions, and it takes me a little bit longer to create the pieces, but all in all, the thought is really just about the aesthetic properties of the piece. Whereas when you're dealing with something like a mug or a teapot, especially a mug, so the mug, you're dealing with your hand, you have to touch it, it has to fit well in your hand. You don't want any sharp spots, so you have to really make sure everything is clean and soft and everything's round and smooth. The lip has to be rounded just right, so that you don't want it too thick or else it'll dribble down the side of your cheek. If it's too thin, it'll break sharp on the glaze. So you have to make the rim just the right thickness. It also, I like to put a nice little roll or a little lip on it so that the liquid pours out of the inside just right. Depending on what you want the cup to do, whether it fits in a cup holder or whether it's supposed to be a little stout, whether you want it to hold heat so that the neck is more narrow, or if you want it to cool off faster so that the opening at the top is wider. There's a lot of different things that go in it. And I mean, the two most sensitive parts of your body, your mouth and your hands, are in contact with a mug. So you really need to take your time and put a lot of effort and energy into making them comfortable, feel good, have very precise thicknesses in lots of different places. So yeah, there's a lot of thought that goes into making functional wear that you wouldn't typically think of. It goes way beyond just creating a satisfying surface. Maki says more sense and used to satisfy, that makes sense. Yeah, exactly. So you're not going to take that horsehair feather bottle that I was talking about where I'm decorating it with smoke and then putting it up to your mouth or holding it. You're not gonna, I mean, you could hold it, but it's not gonna be, you're not thinking about using it, you're just enjoying the surface, the quality, the look of it. And yeah, it never comes in contact with your mouth, so. I'm glad you're enjoying your mug. Yeah, the ceramic is also insulated, so it'll hold heat and cold for a little while for sure. And if you keep your mug in the freezer, then put water in it, stay nice and cold. All right, so step 2 this evening. It's going to be working on this sculptural teapot. So I'm going to have to finish sculpting it and then add the spout and handle to it. So this is where we left off last night. I don't think it's actually connected here, so I'm just going to lift the pot. There we go. So this has a lot of fluid movement moving around. So far I've only worked on this top band. Oh, thank you so much. So to keep going, I started this piece with some fairly large subdivisions of 5 coming around like so, and then I divided those subdivisions again here, coming back down the opposite direction, and then reinforced some of the movement and the sculpting that went into it. And so now it's just a lot of refining. And then I also want to take the sculpting down onto the bottom here where it's not altered yet. So I like to work from the shoulder because it's the first place that your eye goes. So I want to make this one of the more interesting view or focal points of the piece, and then I want everything else to flow down from here. So that's why I started at the top and then I'm working my way down, because this is where your eye is going to be drawn to all the time. I also took a lot of time and kind of made this kind of flow around this ring that's going to hold the lid, so that everything kind of spirals into the center, so it really brings your eye towards the middle as you look at it. And so that was kind of the intention. And so when there's a lid on it, the lid will also have some details that bring it in and then draw it right into the center. You can actually get a little bit of a lower stool. So I can see down at the base a little bit better. I've shrunk! Oh my gosh. I think I also want to get a little cushion for it. Honey, I've shrunk the potter. Exactly, Maki. I'll just grab a little pillow. Actually, this big sponge will do for now. Now I can make perfect miniatures, right? Now it's like making a big pot. Just a normal sized pot now. So I'm going to continue the flow moving through this piece. A cushion. No, my stool has a really nice cushion on it. Yeah, I just wanted to. This stool is way better than the other one I was using. This is actually like a drum throne. It's very, very cushiony and comfortable. A lot better than that wooden one. I actually got two cushions, one for the potter and one for the pot. It worked out well. So I just want to continue like this flowing movement down through this lower part of the form here. So I'm just going to kind of continue. So you can see I'm just starting with a line just to kind of give myself a place to work from. So that's the main lines going around. And so now I can start to give this some shaping. So I'm just going to try to move along those lines. I'm just expanding the clay. Just above. Alien time. Yep, so I'm pushing out the clay, expanding along that crease that I made. And then I'll go all the way around with that. So there's the first ridge coming up from the bottom now. And I'll keep going over that and making it a little cleaner. So you can already see it needs just a little bit more right through there. Just to kind of puff out that ridge a little bit and bring it moving upward. There we go. So now you can start to see that movement. So you do have to be careful. You can push through, overstretch the clay. I say you, but I mean me. I need to be careful. If you choose to do this, then you have to be careful. This is an inclusive stream. You're here with me. You're part of this process, so we're doing it together. So please be careful. You have to be careful for me, please. Yeah, be careful in your creative thoughts. Emotional pottery throwing, that's right. I need the careful the carefulness sent through the internet. Positive, careful thought, energy. All right, one more. Maki says, is it experience that tells you what the state of the clay at this point can take in terms of pressure, etc.? Yes, that's it. That's exactly what it is for the sculpting or the weight on the cushion, for example. Yeah, so I know that the strongest point on the clay is this foot ring here. So I'm really resting it on this foot ring so that I'm also giving it a little support, while I'm pushing on it, I'm holding it and supporting it. So I know what it can take as far as its self-support. And then just through experience and playing with this technique, I've learned how hard I can push it. I can also see, as I'm expanding it, I can tell if it starts to get any... so here is a very smooth, this is what the shape of the pot was before I started distorting it. It's very thin and smooth. And if you look on the ridge that I pushed here, you can see a slight texture. And that texture is the clay expanding. And it can only expand so far before the wet clay that's holding it together wants to separate. So it's like you have your fingers woven tight together and they can stretch and stretch and stretch, but at some point they'll release and you'll get an opening. And so I'm just trying to push it to the point where I can keep expanding it before I get that opening coming through. So it's just lots of practice, lots of experience, knowing what the clay can do. Even though I threw this piece a week ago, I had to keep it under plastic and keep checking the moisture level. So the clay goes through lots of different stages of while it's drying, like cheese hard, leather hard. And so this is before leather hard. If it were leather hard, I wouldn't be able to stretch it the way that I'm stretching it. But it's just firm enough, this is what we call cheese hard, firm enough that it holds its shape, but you can still stretch it, push it, twist it, pull it, all that stuff. And but you can handle it without it just collapsing. If I tried, yeah, cheese hard, exactly. So, like a piece of leather is stiff and you can bend it a little bit, but it doesn't want to rip apart at all. Whereas cheese is kind of squishy, you can kind of give it a little cheese. I guess it depends on what cheese we're talking about here, but without getting into specifics about blocks of cheese, just imagine like a mozzarella, firm mozzarella, I guess. So, or a not like a sharp cheddar, but like a sort of semi. So, all right. So now we're getting into that cheese conversation I said I wasn't going to get into. It's not about what type of cheese it is. It's just what we call it. Okay. It's terminology. So no, it's like a mozzarella. And but anyway, it's stiff enough that it holds its shape, and as I'm holding it, it doesn't distort. And like I'm doing right here, I can lay it on this cushion and it doesn't distort. If I were to lay it on this hard plastic, it would probably get a flat spot, which is exactly why I'm using this sponge as a cushion. So I do know where I'm putting it and how hard I'm pushing it. All right, so now I'm going to go in and reinforce these grooves. So reinforced means, to me, I'm just defining it a little bit more. I want it to be a highlight, so I'm really going to push it back in the other direction underneath of the area that I puffed out. So now you can see it's really getting a good bulge in it. So let's compare it to the one beside it. This is just very kind of, you can see that it has movement, but it's not very deep or showing off too much. And then you look at the one that I just did here, and now you can really see that popping out, and that's just going back and pushing in and going in the opposite direction of the area where I pushed out. So just give it that little bit more emphasis. You can see it moving. So Mountain Mama, I want to know what some of these wire weaving terms are. I can't look it up right now. So the idea of this is that I'm getting to really highlight the quality of the clay. I get to show the viewer what this material is like and how it moves before it's fired, even after it's finished. Yeah, why not? just one term, and that way I can really bring in the soft, pillowy, supple, flowing nature of the clay, and then even after it's fired rock hard and it's a piece of glass, you'll still be able to tell that it's flowing and moving and and it has that nice plastic quality to it. So some wire weaving terms are dead soft, half hard, full hard. Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. So dead soft would be like when I first throw a piece, and then half hard is somewhere around this range to leather hard, and then full hard was what we call greenware, when a piece is completely dry and and it's just waiting to go in the kiln, and it can no longer be manipulated. I could see using those terms for this material as well. Yeah, funnily enough, you can use those terms for cheese. Full circle, exactly, Maki. I love it. Alright. So let's just take a look at what's happening now around this piece. Oh, thanks. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Let's just give it a little spin here on the wheel. Alright, so now that I've got the kind of bold lines moving through it, now I can go back and do some more subdivisions coming down. So I'll split these large areas a little bit and pick another area where I can come off and make another line to separate some of these areas. And it'll add just a little bit more interest moving up through the piece, so you have smaller areas for your eye to move up. So I think for this one I'm going to kind of come off of this area right here and just kind of do something of this nature. extra push right through there. And then really push that line in. And this can go, it could keep going. I could take it and make as many subdivisions as I wanted, and it'll almost start to become like an armor, a pattern, a nice. There we go. So it's funny, I'm using the monitor as a way for me to get a little further away from the piece. Typically I have to kind of step back and look at my work, and now I can see it. And it gives me a nice idea of what it looks like from far away. Alright, so I'll keep moving around. Expanding the clay, and then go back and push it in. Mountain Mama says, I think this would be a great medium for someone who commissions a piece and wants to see the process of what the piece goes through from start to finish. Maki agrees. It gives so much soul to your relationship with the object when you can see and witness its birth. Absolutely. Yeah, so it's got that. It's funny because I have these relationships with these pieces, you know, and it's been a long time that I've worked on creating a lot of the process that I use and mastering it and refining it, and I've had a lot of failures, I've had a lot of successes, and this is just one piece along the way of this journey that I'm taking with my work. And it's nice to get a chance to share it with people. I love doing demonstrations, so it's really nice that I get to kind of have this long format demonstration where you can literally watch me throw this piece from the VOD from last Thursday, and now I'm sitting here sculpting it, and you'll be able to see the start to finish what I go through for this type of work. And that way when you actually go to the website or look at some of the other things that I've done, you'll really start to understand what it is that I've done to create the piece. And if, you know, by chance someone wants to DM me or send me a message or contact me elsewhere to get a piece that I've made online, you know, I'm not ever opposed to that. But to me, this piece isn't finished, right? Like, just because I'm working on it, I can't sell this piece before it's finished. So until it goes online and it's up for sale, you know, I'm not gonna take any money for it. So really, it's just gonna have to be people experiencing my process, and then as I have finished pieces, if it just so happens to be the one that they watched get created, then that would be amazing, obviously. And I'd be very happy to sell it to someone who witnessed its birth and its creation and has that appreciation for it. And hopefully this is just the beginning of that stepping stone along the way for people to start to understand what my process is and who I am as an artist. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Hi, Lisa. How are you? Good to see you. Happy Thursday. I'm working on the sculpture that I started last night. Just putting in some more detail. Yep. Thanks so much. Just taking my time, being careful with the expansions, being careful with how far I'm pushing the clay, making sure that I'm not overdoing it. So some sculptures are really fun when you can let them start to open up and let them have holes if they're not functional pieces. I've made some where you just start to really let it go through, allow the openings to start to form, and then you can really highlight the openings and make them an intrinsic part of the design, which is really fun. So it's just kind of like, you can take it as far as you want when you're doing pure sculpture, which is really fun. So I think I'll do one of those sometime in the near future. Mountain Mama says, I guess it's a way to save a piece that you hadn't intended to make that way. When I start making a piece like this, like even if this one started to open up, I would probably still finish it as a teapot and just leave it non-functional. And sometimes when I'm working on a piece like this, I never intend for it to have a functional purpose. So I'm always kind of approaching a piece like this as a sculpture and thinking about it as a sculpture. A negative space is a benefit, so I would enjoy it if it had holes in it. And so yes, technically if it was something functional, if this happened and while I'm working on this one, it opens up a hole, I could, open up the holes even further and push it into definitely pure sculpture instead of having it be functional. And that's one way to kind of deal with it, but I just never have any real want to make it have a role that just because I'm making an object doesn't mean that its intention is to necessarily be that functional. It's an object and it has that look. It's going to have the aesthetic of a teapot even if it is a sculpture. And if you start looking at lots of other ceramic artists, you'll start to see that there are a lot of people who kind of approach this thrown and altered throwing technique with that kind of grain of salt idea where you're going into it, and if it just so happens to turn into more of a sculptural piece, then so be it. You move on and it's a sculpture. But if it does end up functioning, then that's kind of a nice, it's actually more common for the sculptures to turn out non-functional than they are to turn out functional. And really through practice you could get a higher success rate, but you always have to expect that at some point your sculpture is going to be non-functional. And the clay is very forgiving to an extent, and I could always go back and add a little bit of clay in an area. Like if it does pop through, I could take some wet clay and patch it, so I can really keep it from becoming non-functional. But if that happens with this one, I'll probably patch it, just because I do want it to pour and hold water, because I'm really pushing for this to be a teapot, a functional teapot. So I'm going to work towards it being a functional teapot instead of allowing it to become a sculpture. It's just going to be a functional sculpture. Alright, so now we've got these extra subdivisions put in, so we're just going to wrap around, get a good look at this. Oh, thank you, Mink Doll. Really appreciate it. So another thing I like to do, because I have this, this is going to be pretty round up here at the top, so I could just let the bottom stay 100% round and kind of balance out the rim to the foot. But I think I'm going to sculpt the foot a little bit to make it kind of have a little bit of undulation in it, to kind of bring the form into the pot here at the bottom. So I'm going to grab a paddle. I'm going to pick a point where the lines kind of come down and intersect, and then right in those areas I'm just gonna start giving it a little lift, and then I can really emphasize that. Start to get some lift in the foot. Oh my goodness, thank you so much for the sub, Mink. I I appreciate it. Thank you so much. You are my first sub. I'm going to, I'm working on my emotes, so I'm sorry I don't have them right away. I just got affiliate last night after the stream, and I haven't been able to get my emotes together. So I'll have the emotes for the channel up hopefully tomorrow or the next day. Oh, thank you so much. That's great. That's a good badge. First. So you start to see, put a little movement in the foot, so as you're moving around the bottom, it'll start to have some waviness in it. So I'm just going to keep kind of sculpting out this wave here in the bottom. And I want it to have this forward motion just like the pot does. So it's got a little bit of a peak, like a wave kind of moving in this direction to kind of keep the eye flowing up the pot here. So now find another spot. Sculpting this wave along the foot here. So in case anyone didn't notice, I did make affiliate last night, which means that I can now have subscribers to the channel. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can now subscribe to the channel for free. So if you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free Twitch sub a month. And that means you can just, for free, spend some of Jeff Bezos's money and support some streamers. So I really appreciate that. All the support helps. It'll keep me going, that's for sure. And if you saw an ad at the beginning of the stream this time, it's because the revenue is kicking in now, and if you sub, you don't have to watch the ads. So no interruption there. Just figure I'll let you know this time since it's new. And I'll also get sub-only emotes, so if you sub to this channel, we'll have some special emotes for the channel that you can use across Twitch. So here's how the foot's coming along. This is 3 of the waves coming across now. There's just a couple more to do. Mink asks if I'll be glazing these teapots on stream. My plan is to, I want to, but the idea that I have for these pieces is that I'm going to use a spray technique. So the spray technique involves automotive compressor. So I'm gonna have to figure out how I can either place the compressor in a different space. I'm also gonna have to do it outside. And so I've got a little spray booth, and I need to set up the air compressor, and I need to figure out how to get the camera filming without it being too obnoxious with the compressor running. Otherwise, I will be glazing the regular teapots that I've made, probably without spraying them. It'll be more of a dipping, pouring, brushing kind of finish on those pieces. So I can do those easily right here in the studio. And but my intention is to go through the entire process of making these on stream. So this is actually the piece that I threw last Thursday, and you can watch that VOD anytime. And so I'm gonna try to get the whole thing on stream if I can. Pretty sure I'll be able to. It's just about figuring out some logistics with sound. I don't want it to be like you have an air compressor blowing in your ear the whole time. I've tried to make it as calm of a stream as possible so far, so that it's not just this like kind of sound and going on the whole time. So again, I'm just trying to pay attention to all the little details. I want everything from the foot all the way up through the lid and the spout to have some sort of detail that really ties everything together. Maki is very curious about how it will come to integrate itself into the flow of the core. Are we talking about the flow up into the center of the lid and everything? just how the flow of the... Are we talking about the entire piece up through the lid and into the spout? Yes, the spout and the handle, if you're the right aesthetic manner. Yes. So that is... I'll show you... Did you see the teapot from the beginning of the stream that I finished last night, Maki? No, I just got to the part where I fell asleep. All right, touche. Makes sense. Right. Okay, so at the end of last night, I finished a wavy teapot, and I put the spout and handle on. So here's that teapot. So you can kind of see, I'll start with the lid. So this lid has kind of this wavy carving in the top of it. It's kind of oblong and it moves around, and then I carved that same texture into this ring around the lid. I also have the spout being attached, slightly asymmetrical, and then I have a carving that moves up along the spout and it wraps around it. And I can emphasize all of this still. I'm not 100% happy with how deep this carving around the spout is. I'm actually going to go in and make it a little deeper in a little while. And then as far as the handle goes, you see it kind of wraps up towards, it gives it this kind of flowy movement as it jumps up towards the front of the pot and then kicks back. And then the termination on the handle actually comes down, and the same kind of movement that I'm putting in the foot of this piece you can see in the finish of the tail of this teapot here. So it kind of follows the movement of the teapot going around. So now you can start to see this is, even though this one is, yeah, the tail flowing, exactly. So even though this one doesn't have quite as much going on as this one does in the surface, it still has a lot of the characteristics that I'm going to end up using in this form. It's not going to be exact. I might not do the handle the exact same way. I actually have this like multi-pieced handle technique that I like to use sometimes, and I may try it, but I'll have to see as I look at it. So I don't typically make decisions about how a piece, like, I'm not worried about the handle for this piece until I get to that point. And once I'm looking at the whole thing with the lid, because the lid will be the next thing that I do, working on the body and then the foot, and then I'm going to work on the lid. And once I'm there, I can start making decisions once I see the lid on the form about how I'm going to finish it with the handle and the spout, because the spout and the handle really need to balance. So you can kind of see on this piece, it's just moving forward. So I've got a flow moving in this direction with the handle, and you can also see that it's kind of mimicking this same angle. It's got this parallel line. You have to look at the negative space in the handle. Negative space in the handle moving up through the spout at the same time, and you've got this parallel line moving through it. And that symmetry is what's bringing this piece to a uniformity. So even though it's got a lot of asymmetrical qualities, it has a lot of symmetry in it as well, and it's just kind of like balancing chaos in a sense, which is kind of the idea. I'm like using the flow of the piece, and then that kind of helps me dictate what the piece is going to look like. I also kind of made it kind of triangular in the spout instead of it being just round. It has a kind of a flat top coming down to a point, so it's got this bit of a triangle in it, which kind of emphasizes a lot of the oblong shapes that are coming through in this wavy spiral in the lid. Yeah, balance and chaos. Yep. That's me. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of where my mind is with kind of going towards finishing this piece. And so one of the reasons that I couldn't do this type of sculpture on that piece is because the opening for it is too narrow. This one I can get my hand inside, so I'm able to do a lot of the puffing out, the pushing from the inside to allow me to sculpt it. So I was able to do this with this one, and I wasn't able to do it with that one, but the concept is very similar. Yeah, the view really works here with all the swirls from facing the spout view. Thanks. Yeah, it was really hard. I couldn't tell if anyone could actually see it in the camera, because I was having a hard time seeing whether or not it was getting kind of burned out by the light. But that was something I could see last night that I didn't know if the camera was picking up. And it's kind of important when I'm trying to explain what my aesthetic is and what I'm trying to make happen and why I'm making the decisions I'm making, if you can kind of see what the form is doing. Looking forward to seeing this piece completed. Well, thank you. I am too. I'm as excited about these pieces as you are. It's like it's always like Christmas when you open the kiln, and they're your little babies, and you get to bring them in through the world. I'm also gonna use a polishing slip on these just to kind of lighten the clay body a little bit. Not because it's actually going to stay polished in the long run, but because it will give the clay body itself a lighter color. And that lighter color will help make the glazes that I'm gonna use kind of pop. Kiln miss! Yeah, exactly. Always looking forward to kiln miss. So now I'm just going through and trying to refine the shapes that are here. Just making sure nothing got too flat while I was working on it and handling it. Sometimes you can press out on one of these areas and then you handle it and you don't realize that you're kind of flattening it back down. So I just want to make sure and go through and really get all of these shapes moving the way that I want them. There's actually a little fingerprint dimple right there. So you can also give some tertiary definition to some of these pieces. So I can go back in and kind of create some extra dimples and crevices, and it's kind of like adding little hills to the mountain. So I can come in and make a little valley in there and kind of soften some of these shapes so that they're not exactly these uniform leaf shapes, as Mountain Mama said. Gives it a little more character. So it's like adding some soft lines to the hard lines. So you can start to see there's a little bit more pillowiness in some of these areas now. Just kind of following the flow of the piece, trying to get a good feel for where to put in some of these extra little marks and divots. And I'm just looking at the shapes that are already there and trying to just find part of that form to highlight. And it's just little subtle details like that that give the piece a bit more character. I'm also going over and really softening some of the hard lines that I put in it so that there's no sharp edges left from the sculpting where the tool would have dug into the side of it or where my fingernail would have pushed in. further to go. Will you continue to stream Twitch once the pottery throwdown is over? Yes, I will. Yeah, I'll be streaming for the foreseeable future. This is definitely where I've wanted to be for a while, is working on building my platform here. I wanted to do streaming. I was thinking about trying to do YouTube, but it's not that I can't do video editing, it's just that it's a lot more sitting in front of the computer and a lot less making work. And I'm still planning on doing some YouTube videos. Like, I want to do some tutorials and some how-tos and things like that. And I can also start cutting my videos from Twitch straight onto YouTube if I wanted to share them there as well, or at least segments. And so I'll probably still do something like that, but my idea is definitely to just continue streaming here for the most part. Alright, so I finished the outer surface for the most part right now. As far as I want to go for the moment, I really want to start moving towards the lid and the handle. And I can always come back and do a little bit to the form if I want to. As far as color themes go, you know that I don't really think about that beforehand. I think about that part once I actually have the finished bisqueware in my hand, because until then it's not real. It's just kind of like an exercise. If I were to choose colors, I tend to lean towards the ash glazes and layering, and probably work towards a palette in this range, some like darker, richer tones with a little bit of color pop in between, just to give it some texture. So we'll see. Yes, you do need to make those color dash glazes. I'm really looking forward to it. Have a palette of ash glazes to work with. So an ash glaze, if anyone watching doesn't know, is a glaze that has this natural kind of undulating rivulets. You can kind of see a little bit here where it's starting to kind of break a little bit, and you have some different colors, and they're naturally runny, so they're kind of pouring into these spaces, these drips of color, and running down and creating this flow of glaze. Here's a real nice rivulet, these drops of color that are coming down. And so an ash glaze is just, here's a really nice spot too. Yeah. Ash glaze is just a glaze that pulls and runs down the piece and gives you that kind of finish. All right. This guy needs a home for a minute, so let's see. All right, so here's that handle from earlier. It's been sitting for a while. It seems to be holding its shape pretty well, so I'm just gonna let that be now. So that's what that one looks like. And by finishing that, I get a place to put this for a minute. So here's the lid for that pot. So it fits in pretty good, so I don't have to trim this area down at all. And so all I need to do is trim up the top. So I just want to kind of figure out how much excess clay is in this lid here. It's pretty thick. It's about an inch or so thick in the top, so I've got a lot of room to make the handle pull on top if I want to. that centered up on the wheel. Just give it a little water to help pull down the little pieces of clay that I put on the outside to stabilize it. So I like to start just by getting into the center, start at the outer edge and then work towards the center of the piece. Round out the top. Pretty much want to preserve the height of the very center of it, and then start to come down and remove the excess clay from the center here. The very middle part is where the handle pull would be, so I want to leave that the tallest for the meantime. And then I'll start working down from there. So I'm just bringing this thick clay down and I'm working towards the center for the handle pull. Could always do a completely rounded top without the pull and add some sort of sculptural piece there instead. But I want to try and get this piece made in one piece and then see if I can do a little bit of sculpting on this lid with some carving. And if it doesn't work out, there's always the option to kind of shave it all the way down and then add a pull to the lid. just want just a little undercut underneath the pull. It helps you get your fingers underneath of it to lift it safely. I'm just trying to get a nice little undercut carved here. So I like the height, the shape, the size of this. Now I just need to put in some of the sleep time for Maki. Alright, thanks so much for hanging out. Have a great evening. Have a wonderful night's sleep. Hopefully I'll see you soon. Thanks so much for stopping by. It's always good to see you. So I actually want to get the teapot body and then put this on top and then make some marks for me to kind of draw out where I want any carvings to be to start to fit this to the same form. Currently, we have a nice cookie jar lid, but we want to take it a couple steps further than that for sure. So, it's one of the reasons I leave myself these rings so I can start to kind of make some decisions, and I can, whatever design I put on the lid, I can start to bring down into this area. I can also do the same, bring some designs up onto this rim to then bring it to the lid. So I just want to start making some light marks with my tool just to start getting an idea of what it might look like, and I'm actually going to start the carving on the lid and then bring that down into this ring here. So what I want to do is just imagine a fluid line moving kind of into these areas. So I want to start and then I imagine that moving through this ring. Down into here. It's going to come down into there. One of the reasons I started with the 5 original sections is it helps me subdivide a lot of these other pieces a lot easier, knowing that there are specific points that I can follow. Zottle, short hop, sending some love to you and your wife. Need to go to bed, but wanted to say hi. Hi, Zottle. Thanks so much for stopping by. Good to see you even for a little bit. Have a great evening. Just working on some crazy teapots. Now I'm using this same tool that I used to trim the lid to make the carvings. Oh, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. I want to make sure I get some divots cut to really emphasize, just kind of brings in these folds in this body into the lid, where if you take this symmetrical form and then you start giving it that cutaway. Have to watch the VOD. I do learn so much from you guys. Oh, good. Yeah, please do. I started sculpting this one last night, so if you go back and watch that one, you can see me. And I finished another one that was very similar with a lot of waviness and fun sculpture. So I'm glad you're enjoying the stream and that you're learning a lot. So yeah, please watch the VOD. So now that I've got my main lines, now I want to go back and just start to give it some flow. I don't want it to just be a solid line moving through. I want it to look a lot like the form underneath. So I'm just going to carve away, moving at that same angle that the pot's flowing. What you're doing now, is that what Maki meant by how it will come to integrate itself into the flow of the core? Sort of. Yeah, she was wondering how I was going to bring, they were wondering how I was going to bring the form into, like, just as a whole, because they didn't understand exactly what I meant by kind of sculpting the top and bringing the handle into it, and it was just more of like, how would you integrate this kind of design into a lid and a handle? It just kind of doesn't make sense if you're only used to seeing a traditional teapot. Tomorrow, good luck tomorrow on the sphere attempt, Zottle. I did mine last night. It was it was interesting for sure. I'll have to check it out on stream tomorrow. If I get a chance, I'll stop by. Oh, good. I'm glad it's working. Yeah, it's I don't know what that's about. The Bluetooth has never stopped my Twitch from connecting properly. Or I have had some issues. If I was using multiple Bluetooth devices, then it starts to cause a stutter. But I'm glad it's working for you this evening. Glad to have you here. You guess I did really well. I posted my picture on the week 3 Discord, so you can check that out. I got a 17 centimeter orb. But it went alright. It's similar to some work that I've made before, but it's not exactly what I'm used to. So it was definitely fun to try. I watched Clay is Food do hers today, and she did really well with it. But she said she does it all the time for different things, like making pumpkins and all sorts of stuff. So it was pretty cool. Alright, so just so you can get an idea of what I'm working on here, you can start to see this shape in the lid that I'm starting to carve out. It's got kind of a flowing texture starting to come through. Bye, Zottel. Thanks so much. Good night. Oh, thank you. Thank you. So this one is just a little bit thinner, so I'm going to use this one for a little while because this is so small. Looks like petals to go with the leaves, right? So that's the funny thing about doing this kind of organic sculpture, especially if you follow a pattern. So like I said, this pattern was a pattern of 5. So when I first did the sculpting around the outside, I started with 5 major lines that subdivided the pot, and then I made subdivisions from there. And when you work from a pattern like that, you innately end up with something that looks very natural or would have come from nature. So the fact that you're seeing leaves and petals is perfectly normal and what you would expect to see from even an abstract piece. If you follow the kind of the mathematical rules of it, then you'll end up with something that looks very organic. But I've made a lot of sculptures just following those techniques, where I will just follow anything from as simple as just the Fibonacci sequence, where you work in an order of numbers and you put them together, and you'll end up with something that looks very, very natural. I've made a lot of pieces that ended up looking like coral or ventricles and lungs and different parts of the body, just because you're using these natural prime subdivisions. See an alien berry. Yeah. So that's where I'm at with the lid currently. So as I carve through here, I'm going to have to be very careful to not cut through to the inside of the pot. So I'm going to start very lightly. deepening the marks that I've already made. You have to be very precise and deliberate. And then I'm going to go in and start refining some of these forms. So again, taking this mark that I've made, and now I'm just peeling it back and allowing it to start to pull in a different direction. And what I'll do is I'll probably actually subdivide these areas a bit so that it starts to resemble this form here at the base. It's not 100% floral. I find it really important to just get the basic movement and form in the piece before I worry too much about the fine detail or smoothing. It's not the most important thing to have it smooth and finished until you're basically done with it, and then it's really just aesthetic on whether or not you leave your tool marks or if you polish the form. So with this one, I'm just going to try to get it as smooth as the rest of the piece. So my idea is just to balance it. So right now you can just start to see I'm putting some definition. So these ridges that are coming up around the piece are starting to look like they're higher than the piece next to it. So it's just kind of like creating this higher level that's flowing around. And then I'm going to subdivide it a bit here. It's gonna look more floral. That's fine. I like leaves too. I'm not opposed to it. jump through some of this fairly quickly. Take a look at where it's at now. So the trick is just to kind of pick the points and then highlight the shapes that you're creating. So I'm just trying to get these nice hills and valleys and dips and turns and this flowing movement that's going around the piece, and just really highlight that. And the first thing that you should do when you're doing sculpture is just kind of block out the geometry and then work from there on your finish. So that's basically what I'm doing, is I'm creating the forms that I want to see in the piece, and then I'm going back and giving them the texture and curve and look that I want. Dragonflystrom, how's the weather where you're at today? I heard it was very, very icy in Baltimore, so wondering if Western Maryland held up any better. done most of the primary and secondary shapes on this, so I'm just putting in a little bit of the tertiary shaping with the little bit of back movement to emphasize the flow. Forms really blocked in. Almost done. The weather in DC area today was insane, crazy kind of sleet, not sleet, precip. Yeah, when I woke up today, I had to go outside and let my chickens out, and I took the trash down this morning, and everything had it was raining, but everything had a layer of ice on it. It was just this wet heavy ice on everything. It was just absurd. Not quite sure what that was about. It's a crazy weather. Weighing down the branches on my trees. Sunny in the 80s there. Oh, it must be horrible. Here in Maryland, we get these nice frosty winters and those wonderful 100+ degree summers. It's just amazing. Somebody's got to do it. Ain't that the truth? Might as well be you. Someone's got to enjoy this 80-degree winter day. Those temps would make me faint, right? Well, don't come to the shore then. Or are you talking about the 80 degrees and sunny? Because it's just so unusual. Yeah, the Florida temps, yeah. Right? I was like, you should be used to the 0 degrees and then 100 degrees. Alright, so I'm ready to kind of polish this up a bit. But we're just getting some hills and valleys. Woo! We got it. Jeez. Sorry. Let's get a little aggressive with me cleaning up of this piece. Work them amazing fingers. How you doing, Gubby? Good to see you, man. Thanks for stopping by. It's good to catch your stream last night. Do you work with textiles all the time? Yeah, man. It's glad to be able to catch your stream. Sometimes I paint nice, very nice. Yeah, I'm gonna come try to stop by more often. It's a little later in the evening for me, but it's not too bad. It's about when I'm going to bed. I can kind of hang out and watch some Twitch. Oh, sometimes you knit too. Nice. All right, so here's this lid finished. Just kind of polished it up after carving. Today you got yourself a new metal tea kettle and you were so disappointed. Well, you know, I use an electric tea kettle, the ones that heat up. You just plug them in, fill them up with water, and then I pour the boiling water into these to steep, because you can't put these on the stovetop. The thermal shock from putting them on the burner would actually make them crack at the bottom. So they're steeping pots typically made for serving, and so it's something you would fill with the boiling water and then let your tea steep in it, and then you would pour from it. Yeah, so it's like you kind of need one of the electric or metal ones anyway. It's just a piece of the puzzle. Yeah, I'm thinking about how I want to do something with this area here, and I haven't quite decided. It's got to have something on it to kind of draw everything together, because it's just, I don't know, it's a little plain. It doesn't fit the scheme so far. So I'm thinking about how I want it to move. Thought I would throw it in a wood fire outside and be all nature and Instagram pics. Hey, thanks for the raid, Brooke Price Art. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Welcome everyone from the raiding party. Tonight I'm working on a sculptural teapot. So I've gone through and did a bunch of sculpting on the outside of this form. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And kind of carved through the foot and through the body. And I have a piece that I finished last night. So this is a teapot with the handle and lid, and then the piece kind of, the handle terminates and kind of flows across the form. So that's kind of what I'm going for. Right now I'm just trying to figure out what I want to do with the rim of the piece and kind of bring the whole flow together. So it's just a little bit at a time. I have the spout and the handle to do still after I get this together, so we're just going to throw this teapot together, and after that probably throw some teacups. I don't know how they probably wouldn't do too well in a straight wood fire, but if you found a way to heat them up slowly, Gumby, you could probably do something like that. So I've already got, I use this line coming down from the lid to work into the form, so I'll just follow this line in between the lid, and I'll just make a couple marks. So that's going to come down. So I'll do a little sculpting in the rim just from these marks. Probably be best to keep it a little simple in this part. So it doesn't attract too much attention and the eye can move a little bit more freely across the body to the lid. important to make sure that the eye can continually move across the piece. So you really want to find ways to bring, as the eye is moving up around the piece, hit and then kind of come back down and around, and really keep going. The longer the eye moves around the piece, the more interesting it is, and it can hold your attention longer. I'm just gonna do this kind of wave going around the side. So it carries the flow of the piece, but it doesn't get too intricate to kind of stop the eye or pull it into a space where it can't escape. Thank you for the follow, Tumtillion. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So I'm just gonna clean that up and then see what it looks like with the lid. Yeah, we gotta turn that old kiln into a soda kiln for sure. That would look really nice. So there's a type of firing where you actually add baking soda or salt to the firing. So the firing for these types of pieces, goes up to around 2,232 degrees Fahrenheit to 2,350 degrees Fahrenheit. That's in potter's terms, cone 6 or cone 10. And at those peak temperatures, you can actually take baking soda or salt and introduce it to the kiln while it's red hot, and the salt vaporizes in the kiln and then attaches to the clay body, and it creates its own glaze. And it's a very natural kind of juicy look. So even if you have glazes on the piece, it just makes those glazes get real kind of voluptuous and has this really nice juiciness to it, and it also gives it in the places where there's no glaze, it can create a texture kind of like an orange peel, where it's kind of got this slightly dimpled surface on it, and it feels really, really nice. But you could put the piece in without any glaze on it at all, and it'll give you that really interesting finish. You can use different slips. Slip is a clay slurry, and you can use different clay slurries and kind of put those, and they're called flashing slips, and you can add those to your piece to give some very interesting colors coming into the piece as well, that aren't just brown and orange or silver. Just trying to refine these shapes a little bit so that they keep the flow of the pot moving. Very interesting form. You read my mind. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. So now I'm gonna grab the spout and see where I think that's gonna fit on nicely. So I've got the spout here, and I'm gonna switch my stools and get a little higher again now that I'm done carving for a little while, so I can get a little bit of a higher view on this piece. I want to see it from above. I want to find a nice place to fit the spout. This is one of the larger bits coming off, so I think it's gonna fit there pretty nicely. You can already see it blends a little up pretty good into that area. So it's gonna be more about sculpting this to kind of fit the look of the piece. So I'm just gonna start to work it a little bit and soften the clay a bit, start moving it again, because it's been sitting for a little while. Just pressing on it, trying to soften it up a bit, dragging that surface layer of clay around, Give me a few pinches. So, I'm just trying to thin this clay out a bit. Don't need the attachment area to be too large. So I'm just going through and pinching it, trying to reduce the diameter of this ring. And I'm okay with it having a little bit of asymmetry. I want it to match this form, so I'm just going to kind of push that into it. Just want to look at the shape coming up from it. I want it to feel pretty natural coming off of that slope. Also want to make sure that the bottom of my spout is lining up pretty good with the pot here. So when I pull this over to round out the spout so it pours better, it should come down right to where I want it.